Hello, we are in Chapter 7, Section 7.1, Composing Functions. In this video, we are gonna go over problem number 4, in which we are to evaluate compositions using a table of values for two functions, f and g. Some of the parts, as you can see, are only about evaluating one function, while the other ones are about evaluating compositions. So we start with f of 2 in part A. So we're looking at the column for f of x at each input, and our input is 2, so it will be that row pretty much. Therefore, the number f of 2, or the value of the function f at the input of 2, is 8. In part B, we have g of 2, so we'll be looking at the column for the function g of x, but again evaluating at the input of 2, and that value is 5. Now for the remaining parts, we'll have to do it in steps. In part C, we start with g of 3, so the column for g and the input of 3, that gives us the value of 2. That now becomes the input for the function f. So looking at the column for f, we identify the value for the input of 2, and that is 8, which we already knew from part A. That's it for part C, of course. Now in part D, we have g of f of 3. So we start with f of 3, so function f, input of 3, that value is 3, and that becomes now the input for the function g. So now we have to evaluate g of 3. So we're just switching here, and we get that 2 that we already found also in the first step of part C. So 2 is the final answer for part D. In part E, it's f of g of 1, so we start with g of 1. So in the column for g, we look for the value corresponding to the input of 1, which is 3, as you can see. And that 3 becomes the input for the function f. And we already found f of 3 in part D. It was 3. Just to remind you, this column, that row, and here is that value of 3. So that's the final answer for part E. Now moving on to part F, we start with f of 4 to later apply g to that value. F of 4 is in the column for f for the input of 4, and that gives us 1. That 1 becomes now the input for g. So in the column for g, the input of 1 results in 3. Finally, in part G, we're looking for f of 4. So we're applying function f twice, but first to 4 to see what that gives us. And f of 4 is 1, as we found in part F already. And to that 1, now we apply the function f again. So we are still in the same column, but now we are evaluating f at 1. That value is 6. And that will be the final answer for part G.